Hello folks, JD Wessel back here with another Wildcat breakdown. Great to be back. It's a beautiful Friday morning, and we are joined here by Craig Sullivan and Jaden Cover. How you boys doing?
Oh, good. How you doing,
fantastic.
I'm good. You know, always great to hear from you guys at the start of the show. Just see how you're doing. So again, I'm JD Wessel. Great to be back. We're going to hop right in. NBA playoffs coming here tomorrow. We're going to try and toss this podcast up for you guys, which would be this Friday. Games would be tomorrow. So guys, going right into it, I just want to talk about how the seeding went down, and we saw kind of an interesting Western Conference ending. A lot of seeds were up for grabs. I believe 11 of the 16 seeds were still debatable, or they still had room to shift around on the final day, and we saw a lot happen. So what we're sitting with is Houston at a 1 seed, who's matching up with the Timberwolves of Minnesota. And then the 4 and 5, we have Oklahoma City at 4 and Utah at 5. And then moving down, we have Portland as a 3 seed going against New Orleans at the 6 seed. And then we have Golden State at a 2 seed with San Antonio at the 7 seed. So that is the Western Conference bracket, and a lot to be said about this side. And I know, seeing the West, not really what everyone envisioned, guys. We have Houston at the 1 seed and Golden State at 2. What are your guys' thoughts, kind of how the bracket, shifted out to be?
Well, I think definitely, especially on the eastern side, you have Miami and Milwaukee. They have a tied record. That's the difference between playing Boston and Philadelphia, which I think is probably
I'd say we start with the West. What are your thoughts on the West?
I think OKC is a nice draw getting Houston instead of Golden State. I don't think they match up well with them. New Orleans looks like they have a pretty good draw getting Portland. Being a lower seed, they have 3 potential stars that could end up giving Golden State trouble if they go out there. I mean, when you're talking about the West, you have to talk about Golden State.
For sure. And that's been a lot of people's questions. Jaden, what are your thoughts on Golden State this year?
You looked at Golden State 2 years ago when they went 73 and 9, and people thought, that's the greatest team ever, and it's up there with Jordan's team, and then they go and lose in the finals. So I think Golden State has kind of learned, well, if we spend all our energy in the regular season, which it seemed like, towards the end after Cleveland's last 3 games that year, they were gassed. They had nothing left in the tank. So I think the last 2 seasons. Last regular season, this regular season, they've learned, hey, we need to rest our stars. So you see Steph Curry resting at times. You see, obviously, part of the reason for that is injuries. I think they're getting the proper rest they need throughout the season because it's not really a debate if they're going to make the playoff. It's what seed are we going to be. And so I think a 2nd seed, it's doable for them, and I think they have a favorable matchup.
For sure, and a lot of people would agree that Golden State kind of took the Cleveland Cavalier route in a way. We've seen LeBron and the Cavs not really worry about their seeding in the playoff. And I mean, a lot could argue that the East isn't as dominant as the West. But if you look at it, Golden State, they could have, given the injuries. I mean, I know they had Steph and Durant out for a big portion of the season, but, Golden State is still a team that can be a 1 seed. They can achieve that, 60 to 70 win season. This is a team that's done it before, and I think Golden State this year, they kind of said, all right, we're going to take the Cleveland Cavalier approach where they don't really, they know they're a playoff team and they're going to be a solid playoff team. They don't really worry about the matchups that they get because they know they're one of the best teams in that given conference.
Well, let's be honest, JD, the 6, 7, 8 seeds, they can be interchangeable, and like we saw in the last few games, they were interchangeable. They flipped constantly those last few days. So it really doesn't matter if you're a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. Just be around the top.
That is definitely true. If you look at 3 through 8, there are 2 games differentiating them for it. So the West is definitely wide open. I mean, Denver got left out at 46 and 36, and then you have teams over in the East getting in at 43 and 39. So the West is obviously the stronger conference, and it's just going to be a tough draw for anyone there if you're not one of the top teams. But Golden State did get San Antonio, an older team, especially if Kawhi Leonard's not playing or 100%. So I think they probably work that draw out pretty well.
Yeah, and believe it or not, the Oklahoma City was actually a 7 seed going into that final day. they won their final game, which pushed them all the way up to a 4 seed. So that just kind of shows how close the West has been this year. And we're seeing teams like San Antonio and teams like Minnesota, 2 teams that a lot of people thought would be a higher seeded team, kind of fall off. And San Antonio, even though Greg Popovich has dealt with the Kawhi injury and, a lot of guys just being older and being one of the older teams in the league, we see those teams that were so, highly scouted and, highly expected to do well. I mean, San Antonio, they, started the season, a lot of people were saying, yeah, they're a solid 3 or 4 seed in the West. But now we're seeing them at a 7 seed, and we're seeing a team like Minnesota who picked up Jimmy Butler in the offseason. We're seeing them at an 8 seed. Minnesota had to win their final game against Denver to get into the playoffs. And that just kind of shows how the West is, not as good as everyone might have thought at the end of this season. Coming into the start, a lot of people thought this western side of the bracket would be the dominant, conference as always. So let's kind of, before we go in depth of the Western Division or the Western Conference, let's head over to the East. Craig, I know you're an East guy. I mean, this East is kind of interesting. We got Toronto at the 1 seed, matched up against Washington, who is the 8 seed. We got Cleveland at the 4 seed, going against Indiana at the 5. We have Philadelphia at the 3 seed, going against Miami at 6, and then Boston and Milwaukee. So what are your guys' initial thoughts going into this East? There's a lot of interesting matchups. One that I really like is Toronto and Washington. Toronto might be a 1 seed and Washington might be the 8, but these are 2 teams that, at the start of the season, a lot of people thought these 2 teams would be the one to give the Cavaliers a run for their money. What do you guys think we might be seeing, not only from Toronto and Washington, but a couple other games around the league?
Well, definitely for Toronto, they did not really get good luck here. I mean, you're going to be playing Cleveland second round either way. Even if you're able to beat Washington, it's not an easy 8 seed in the East. It looks like the bottom half of the bracket's a little easier, but for Toronto, I do think Toronto does have the firepower to get past Washington and at least give LeBron James a few extra games. I don't think they're going to be able to sweep them.
Yeah, I'd agree with Craig there. I think the interesting thing about Toronto and Washington is I kind of equate them to like the no-name teams. Like Toronto, they're one of those teams where they just came out, won 50-plus games, and I couldn't name a single player on their roster.
Yeah, and that's weird to say for Toronto. I mean, let's be honest, these past 3 to 5 years, Toronto has been, a 3 seed, a 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, but they just, and a lot of people say it, they really can't get over that hump of winning those big playoff games. And believe it or not, they're actually ranked 3rd in total playoff wins in, I believe, the last 5 seasons. So they're right behind Golden State and the Cavaliers, which those 2 teams have been firing back and forth the past 3 or 4 years. I mean,
I think they lack a superstar. And in the NBA, if you're going to win, you need that guy that's going to carry you there. I mean,
and guys, keyword superstar.
Yeah,
I mean, they have the all-stars, DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, but
they're not going to have a guy that when you look back, 20 years from now, you're going to be like, hey, remember watching him play. Yeah. They don't have that stud. You could argue for Washington they do with John Wall, but he doesn't have the core around him. I think it kind of reminds me of the Cleveland's issue, before LeBron left for Miami. It's just, you got a great player, but you don't have anyone around him.
What I do like, though, with Washington in this matchup is we're going to be seeing Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan going against John Wall and Bradley Beal, which will be really interesting. And, yeah, like you said, though, I think it kind of goes John Wall. Bradley Beal is up there. Don't get me wrong. He's a nice little sidekick to have, if you want to say, for John Wall. But, again, I don't really know if Washington has enough depth outside of those 2. And I think that can be said for Toronto as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, they have veterans like Serge Ibaka and, a lot of other guys that can kind of fill their role and do their job and get them past each and every night, which they've done pretty well this season. So, yeah, that's a little wrap-up of the East. Another game I want to look at is another series is Boston and Milwaukee. Boston, they're dealt with Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving being out, along with a lot of other minor injuries, not injuries that will keep players off the court for the whole series, but, just this is a banged-up Boston team nonetheless, and having Kyrie Irving out, having Gordon Hayward out for the remainder of the season, remainder of the playoffs, it's got to be tough for Boston. Do you guys think they come out of that bottom matchup, the 2-7 game? Do you guys think they come out winners?
No, I think Milwaukee's going to do it. I think, Boston, I do think it's a resilient squad. We've seen them in the past, especially when Isaiah Thomas was on their team. They won games they shouldn't have won, but I think it'd be asking a lot of them right now, and I think their morale just has to be down. I mean, you look, even before Kyrie Irving was out, you could argue that they would make a run, maybe even to the finals, but I think with him out, it's kind of out of the picture to make it to the finals, let alone, make it to the second round, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, and, there's got to be a lot of opinions. Craig, I want you to talk about the Philadelphia and Miami matchup. That one could be interesting. I mean, Philadelphia, they are a 3 seed. Hashtag trust the process is what, everyone's been talking about. A lot of people think Philly could be the team to come out of that East.
Well, definitely. They have Markelle Fultz, Jahlil Okafor. They have a lot of players on the team that they did get through the draft, through their little tanking theory there. So they will be a tough team, especially if Boston gets out. I think they don't really match up well with Philadelphia, but Philly is still pretty young. I think they will have some issues, a little turbulence in the playoffs, but like you said, they do have a chance to come out of the East.
For sure.
I like Philadelphia. I think when I initially looked at the matchup against Miami, I'm like, oh, this is going to be tough. Then you remember this team's won 16 straight games. They're coming into this playoffs about as well as you can want to come in. Ben Simmons is playing well. He's starting to, get triple-doubles, it seems like night after night. If they can get Joel Embiid healthy, because I know he has like a fracture in his face, but once he comes back, and I think he'll be back.
I think he'll be ready game 1.
You think he will?
Honestly, yeah.
See, I've heard anywhere from next game to 2 to 4 weeks. If it's 2 to 4 weeks, different story. But if he's back, I think that they're going to beat Miami. I think it's going to be close, but,
And, I mean, talking about Joel Embiid, out of all the guys in the NBA, that is the guy that wants to be on the court more than anyone else. Mm-hmm. You see him not only on Twitter, but just on the court. He's a pure competitor. Even if he's not having his best night, he still, supports his team, finds a way to have his team win, whether it's rebounding, point production, or, even assists. Joel Embiid is one of those guys that is just a constant factor for his team. Obviously, starting the trust the process hashtag, I don't know if that has to do anything with his team's success, but, it's definitely a factor. If you think about it, I mean, they come into every night. Philadelphia knows this is a team that wants to win a ring. They want to win a title, and they want to, get Philly back to the promised land. And I think Joel Embiid is one of the best leaders in the NBA currently, even with how young he is. And so now let's just hop back into the West. We're going to kind of go through the bracket and get all your guys' opinions. Quick little, matchup, what you guys think might happen in the playoff series. So let's just start here with the top left of the bracket, which would be Houston, Minnesota, and then Oklahoma City, Utah. Who do you guys have coming out of that first round, and what do you guys see in that potential matchup of, Houston, Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, who do you guys have coming out, and who do you think will be moving on to the conference finals?
Well, I do like Oklahoma City coming out of that Utah game. I think Russell Westbrook will be able to carry them past Utah. Utah really doesn't have any big stars or anyone that would be able to help them in the playoffs. I think it does get interesting. I do think Houston beats Minnesota, so it'll be very interesting. Houston, Oklahoma City, I could see that game going, see that series going 7 games. I do think Westbrook will eventually be too much. Seems like Harden's more of a one-dimensional player. Might be able to slow him down a little bit better. So I do think Oklahoma City gets out of that, but I do think they'll eventually lose before getting out of the Western Conference.
Okay. Jaden, what are your thoughts?
I got Houston over Minnesota. I think that's going to be my surprise series, though, as far as, you should watch it, because I think I could see that going 7 games with Minnesota. I do think that with Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns, they can give up a fight to Houston if Harden has an off night or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think Oklahoma City gets past Utah a lot easier than people would think. I know a lot of people have Utah winning that, but I think Oklahoma City handles them fairly easily. But I do think Houston will beat OKC. I think Westbrook will kind of get leaned on too much in that series, and they might steal a win or two early, but I just think, you got to question the fatigue factor with Westbrook, and he struggles in the playoffs. Not that Houston has been notorious for getting far in the playoffs, but I think that Houston gets past there to get to the semis.
Okay, yeah. And, I think a lot of people would say Oklahoma City's a surefire team over Utah. But again, we've seen a lot of struggles from this Oklahoma City team. Don't get me wrong, they have the players necessary to make a run. If you're Westbrook, you can't ask for more than a veteran Carmelo Anthony. He may be old, but, let's face it, Carmelo Anthony, whether you like it or not, he is still playing at what some would like to call, his best abilities. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's not the same player he was in New York, but he's definitely filling his role in Oklahoma City. I know he doesn't do quite as much in Oklahoma City, but, having him on the court is just another player you got to guard. You got to keep Melo locked down. He's definitely turned into a transitional corner specialist, I'd say, for Oklahoma City. And then having Paul George, just to top that off, Paul George is one of the, I'd even call him a superstar. I mean, right now in Oklahoma City, he may not be, but I think coming next summer, he could find himself in LA being, once again, a superstar. He definitely was when he was playing for Indiana. And I think having that big three in Oklahoma City, they're definitely going to make something happen come playoff time. But I do think they struggle round 1 against Utah. I think they win. And my prediction is they're going to go 7 games with Utah. I know a lot of people think Oklahoma City is going to take care of business, or we're going to see Donovan Mitchell take over in the playoffs. But I think this will be a really good series between Oklahoma City and Utah. And then, obviously, Houston, I think they're going to take care of business. And I think we're going to, see them take care of business pretty easy. I know Minnesota, a lot could argue they have the talent there, but I think they're just too young. And I definitely have Houston moving on. And then moving into that semifinal game, Houston and Oklahoma City, I think we're going to see a back-and-forth series all throughout the playoffs. I know James Harden just a year ago, they kind of took care of business against Oklahoma City, beating them in, I believe, 5-game series. But I think this Oklahoma City team, they want to end on a good note. If it is Paul George's last year, if it is Carmelo's last year of, being a sort of all-star material player. So I think we're going to see Oklahoma City move to the conference finals, upsetting Houston in the playoffs. I think Oklahoma City is kind of set to run deep, and I think they're going to be this sort of Cinderella story in the NBA playoffs this season. So now we're going to move down to the bottom half of the bracket, where we have Portland and New Orleans and Golden State and San Antonio. What do you guys think we might be seeing on that side? And, just quickly, what might happen when we reach the conference finals?
Well, I definitely think another upset I have is New Orleans beating Portland. I think Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins and Drew Holiday are going to be too much for Damian Lillard and McCollum.
Well, hey, DeMarcus Cousins is out for the series. Well, he's out for the season, actually. New information there.
Yeah. That's still tough. I mean, you still got a tough matchup there. I think if New Orleans could slow down Lillard and McCollum, they don't really have too much else in Portland. I would still say New Orleans would probably get past that, but probably make it a little easier for Golden State to advance.
Go ahead. I think Portland's going to take care of business. I don't really have much to back it up, but I don't know what this series will be. I just think they're going to get past, and then I think San Antonio, I like them. I think Greg Popovich is one of the greatest coaches of all time, if not the greatest. But I just think, we're too far removed from the good days from San Antonio. I don't think there's any magic really left in this team, especially with Kawhi being hurt. So
for sure. And I also have Golden State. I'm just going to start with them saying, they have a real good chance to sweep this side of the bracket. Not too much competition. I think New Orleans could give them one game. But I think Golden State, they're going to move into the conference finals, only losing one game. And I think we're going to see an Oklahoma City Golden State matchup. That's something I really want to see, Kevin Durant against Russell Westbrook. And I know Russell Westbrook definitely wants to see that too. He wants redemption on Kevin Durant. And, he might be one player to say, hey, I don't really care about it anymore. I just want to go win. But deep down Russell Westbrook wants that matchup, coming into the playoffs here, and he has a good opportunity to see that if they can get through Houston, which is obviously the powerhouse of the NBA this year. So we're going to head over to the East, top side, Toronto, Washington, Cleveland, Indiana. Go ahead, boys.
Oh, I definitely think Toronto gets past Washington round one. But I think Cleveland will end up beating them and advancing to the conference finals.
Yeah, I don't have Indiana. I have Cleveland winning it, Toronto winning it, and I just like Craig. I think I could see Cleveland getting out of both series 4-0. I know Toronto was good in the regular season, but every time they matched up with Cleveland, it seemed pretty obvious who was the better team. And playoff LeBron is different, and it seems like we got a glimpse of playoff LeBron towards the end of the regular season.
For sure, I'd agree. I love that Cleveland-Indiana rivalry they had back in, I don't even know what year it was. Well, around 13,
think
14.
About that. If you're Indiana, you get the 5 seed in the East, and you got Cleveland first round. That's
Lance Stevenson still on Indiana. Well, he actually returned to Indiana, and we're going to see a Lance Stevenson-LeBron little feud, I think. But I think, LeBron, he's going to turn into his playoff mastery. Just what he always brings to the table in the playoffs. It's LeBron. How could you go against him? I think LeBron is going to sweep Indiana, and then they're going to play Toronto. I think Toronto might play a close one with Washington. That one could go either way, in my opinion. Having John Wall back, he was gone for a portion of the season. Seeing him at an 8 seed is definitely not what Toronto wanted. So I think we will see a good series there. But Cleveland, I think they're just too much for Toronto, even though you could argue Cleveland isn't the same team they were with Kyrie. I think still having Kevin Love there to back up LeBron and then all the young guys that they brought in from LA, I think we're going to see Cleveland take care of business, move on to the conference finals. And then I think moving to the bottom bracket, we're going to see some interesting stuff. A lot of young teams down there. Craig, what do you think we're going to see?
Well, I do think Philly ends up getting past Miami. That's going to be harder than anticipated series. You can see it going about 6 games. Maybe 7. Miami had some decent pieces, even though they finished the year a little weak. I would say Boston will get past Milwaukee. Boston seems like more of an overrated team. I mean, they do have Irving still, but I would say also Philly getting to the conference finals to play Cleveland. I think that'll be a very interesting matchup, kind of setting up what could be coming in the future. The younger Philadelphia team and the older, more experienced Cleveland team.
Go ahead, Jaden.
I think Philadelphia gets past Miami. I just think we talked about it earlier. I just think they're really hot right now, and I think Milwaukee pulls the upset, but not really upset against Boston. I think with Kyrie out, this isn't going to be a strong Boston team. It'll be a good series, but I think Antetokounmpo might take over and his kind of his playoff coming out party. Mm-hmm. And then I think will be a very interesting matchup. You could argue 3 young stars on the court in the matchup between Philadelphia and Milwaukee, but I think Philadelphia will just have the manpower over Milwaukee. And I think we're going to see them playing Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Alrighty, and I'd have to agree with you guys on Philadelphia. I think they're locked against Miami. We could see a good series, but I think Philadelphia, they're riding the hot hand right now. Jaden, you said it best. They're on a 16-game winning streak. You don't see that too often in the NBA. You can get beat by any given team any night. I know we saw Golden State go on, heck, I don't even know what the streak was, but Golden State back when they won 70-so games, they just completely blew everyone out of the water every single night. They had a couple close games, but never really challenged to lose. And I think Philadelphia, again, riding the hot hand, they're not going to be a team to lose four games in a series, at least at this point, until they go against Cleveland. I think Philadelphia matches up against Boston and Milwaukee. Again, that could be a good series. But I do think this Boston team has a lot of players who have already been on the team. They have good chemistry with those players, and we've seen this Boston team work without Gordon Hayward well all season. They even captured a 2 spot over Cleveland and Philadelphia. So I say, why not go for one more round? I think Boston wins it over Milwaukee, but I think we're going to, again, see Philadelphia against Cleveland in the conference finals. So, boys, the final 4 of the NBA playoffs. Who do you guys have advancing, and how many games do you think we could be seeing in these 2 conference finals?
Well, OKC Golden State, I think that could be a pretty classic one, Westbrook versus Durant. I can see it going about 6 games. I do think ultimately Golden State does get the better of them, especially if Steph Curry is fully healthy by then and able to play a full game. And then on the other side, I do think Cleveland ends up being Philly. LeBron James is just too much for the younger Philadelphia squad.
Jaden?
Yeah, I've got Golden State against Houston, and I think Durant's going to kind of lead them and get them past. I think it's going to be a 7-game series. It's going to be back and forth. I could see it being one where Golden State steals one early, and then it becomes home team wins the rest of the way. And then I think on the other side with Cleveland and Philadelphia, I think it's going to be a 5-game series. Cleveland advancing to face Golden State in for the 4th time in a row. So.
Okay. And I have Oklahoma City and Golden State. I'm a big Oklahoma City guy, so if we're being honest, everything is pointing to Golden State beating Oklahoma City, and I think a lot would agree on that. That Oklahoma City just doesn't have enough to beat Golden State, but when you look at it, Oklahoma City, I believe, owns the series this year against Golden State. I don't know. It might be tied 2-2 on the series for the regular season wins and losses. I'm not too sure on that, but I know Oklahoma City has beat them, pretty soundly a couple times this season, and I think Oklahoma City having Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, and even Steven Adams, a veteran on the court, I think having those 4 guys could be enough to beat Golden State this year. I think having Paul George and Carmelo Anthony know Russell Westbrook's goals for the season, not only in the regular season, but in the postseason, his goal beating Golden State and Kevin Durant. I definitely think Russell Westbrook has those guys on his back, has them on their side, and he knows what he wants. And, along with all these players, they want to get to the NBA championship game and obviously win it. But I think this Oklahoma City team, if they can make it to this conference finals matchup, I think they have a good shot of beating Golden State. And then on the Eastern side, I have Cleveland against Philadelphia. The East, they haven't really been talked about that much this year just due to Houston coming out of nowhere, all the West teams kind of mixing up. We've seen a lot of guys head over to the East or to the West. So I think Cleveland and Philadelphia, that'll kind of be one of those series that you don't really, it won't be talked about too much. I think Cleveland, though, they'll take care of business. We could see Philadelphia kind of give them a fight, but I think Cleveland, again, will take care of business. I think LeBron is headed to the finals for however many years he's been there. And I think Cleveland and Oklahoma City will be a good little final test for this Oklahoma City team that has only been together for this year. I think Oklahoma City will come out, do their job, take down King LeBron. I got Oklahoma City winning it all, boys. That is a far stretch, but that's what I'm hoping for. Craig?
I do have Golden State winning it. I mean, I don't think I'll be rooting for them, but just looking at the obvious team there, when they're all healthy, they're very tough to beat. I do think they end up beating Cleveland in 6 games.
Yeah.
I've got Cleveland beating Golden State in 7 games. I think it's going to be another one like we saw 2 years ago. I don't know if Cleveland's going to come back 3-1, but I think it's going to be one where it's going to have to be LeBron taking over, kind of having another signature moment to add to, I guess, the legend of LeBron.
Mm-hmm. Just kind of going over the monsters, beating them. Yep. And, last little note, guys. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Houston. I think Houston... I just think a lot of people are doubting the James Harden, Chris Paul hype. They've been known to kind of flake off when they get to the playoffs. I think Houston's a team to watch out for. I mean, it's kind of obvious they're a 1 seed. They're definitely a team that could go a long distance, but a lot of people are doubting them just due to the lack of playoff I guess you could say, experience. And I think, again, Houston is a team to watch out for. You guys have anything else to kind of wrap it up?
I think it'll definitely be interesting. We'll see a lot of upsets, but in the end, 2 teams everyone expects to be there will be there.
Yeah, I'm with Craig here. Obviously, we have the same teams. I have Houston going to the conference championship, so I guess, the only thing I'm doubting on them is their ability to beat Golden State, but I just don't think they have it this year.
Alrighty, I think that's all we have. Again, playoff basketball for the NBA. Starting here tomorrow, we're going to toss this podcast up for you guys today, which would be Friday. We hope you guys enjoyed. This has been JD Wessel,
Craig Sullivan,
and Jaden Cover
with the Wildcat Breakdown. We'll catch you guys next week.